Today, we are blessed with the presence of Alex, who played Alubine.
Alabine.
Bean. Bean had been perched over the rail, looking out wistfully across the sea, his favored land to serve as a druid. And as the ship hurls and he's tumbled about, and the Wilhelm scream of the sailor with its legs taken about, and the chaos as everybody's falling, he looks over and says, "Hey guys, I think something's wrong with the ship."
So Alabine was your character in Die Inspired.
Yeah.
How did you come up with Alabine? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, so with Alabine, for starters, he was a wood elf druid. And looking through the stuff, I really liked the idea of, with us being on a ship, I was like, okay, maybe like some coastal flair, have some idea for some water spells, things like that. And so with that kind of core concept, and then working with the rest of my friends, because of course I could just make a character that's based on his solo things, but I also wanted to get with my friends that joined me, Ben and Morgan, and kind of come up with a whole cohesive story for three of us to be together.
Yeah.
And so as Ben came up with his, what was his name, Desmond,
No, it doesn't.
the knight, and of course the horse, which I had to rep over here for the interview.
Oh, nice. Wait,
Friend of
what's
mine
let me
made
see
this
what
shirt. It's one of my just favorites.
your mama.
Love it. But I was like, it makes sense. Like I was like, if we're gonna bring a horse on a boat, we're gonna need some extra help. And I figured the druid was a good way of going about it, and just kind of fleshing out the rest of the details of the character organically from there. Of okay, well, why would this elvish druid be on this boat with a bunch of people, and just kind of letting the story pan out in a way that makes them more mutable to everybody else involved, more approachable, and just easier to interact with the story.
Huh? I mean, it was. I loved it. I think it was amazing. Moonwiver was definitely.
It was a lot for me.
It was a twist. Roscoe didn't expect
that damn horse.
Yeah, bring it. Bring the horse. Bring the horse. But yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So is that how you kind of approach every character? If you were going into a game, you basically like, all right. So the more you know about what you're going into, the more I'm like, I'm going to kind of do it this way. This would be fun to do it this way. Or if I'm going into the hills, maybe someone that's camping. Or
yeah, well, to an extent, like obviously you don't always have the forehand knowledge of what's coming up in campaign. Well-rounded characters are typically always going to be a better move anyway. But it's also just one of those things of looking at your party composition. We saw like a lot of barbarians, a lot of fighters, which are good for that. I don't know what I'm getting into. I'm well-rounded. But being able to, look with my party beforehand and say, what roles do we need covered? What can I do? Because ultimately, if everybody makes like a loose kind of like solo character thing, which of course for Die Inspired, there's only so much we could do. The nature of the game itself. So it's like, it's totally fine. But overall, I found that in my time, taking the time to just make sure that your entire party is as balanced and cohesive as a unit as it can be is going to lead to a better time than just being like, this is my character concept that I know I'm doing. Nobody can change my mind otherwise, because the collaborative storytelling and working as a unit usually just leads to a better time than getting stuck on a specific lone wolf character kind of concept. And so
100%.
That's kind of my main focus. And everything else after that is ideal. If I can find out something about where the game is heading, especially playing like spellcasters, the more you know about the day coming up, the better you can prepare with spells. And the more you kind of lean into that, and the cohesive party sense just really makes for as smooth a game as possible.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah, and I love it. So last question about this, and then we can move on to our little where do the dice take us game. Where did you come up with Alabine? The name? Like how did you come up with that?
Yeah, Alabine, I like to immerse myself in the lore as much as possible. And so I'd gone to, I think it was some random elven name generator that was, I went with a Forgotten Realms one just to kind of like be safe. And I started searching things, kind of, again, digging deeper into elves. They have their birth name, but then once they turn their equivalent of, 18, I think it's like 120 or something, they kind of choose their own name for themselves. So as I made this character backstory of, an elf who had done the normal things, he found himself more drawn to the nature, and then specifically coastal cities, as he loved marine life. And so by the time he became a first level druid focusing on the sea, it made sense for his name to be the name he chooses for himself to be kind of in line with that. So I don't remember offhand what it translates into directly, but it was something along the lines of something coastal, something sea oriented, something storm, or something along
Alright.
those lines, translating to the Elven tongue.
Awesome. That's awesome.
That was
And
fun.
that is, and that's kind of one of the reasons why we're kind of doing these interviews too, because there's a lot of interesting characters, but
Oh,
we
yeah.
didn't have time to dive into all the characters, and
Of
knowing
course.
that backstory right there of Alabine and kind of how you played him out. That, I mean, it opens up the game even more.
It makes
Like,
it makes
I
their
see.
death way more tragic.
It makes their death
Yeah.
way more
It's not just it's not a red shirt, in Star Trek. It's
Right.
it's more like a Walking Dead character.
I
Oh,
am
love that
somebody.
guy.
I
Uh-huh.
exist. I exist. All right.
I'm a sun sign is Gemini. I live for the thrill of just fun stuff. I don't need money to have a good time. I'm vibing fine on my by myself. If other people want to vibe with, that's fine. But like I'm doing my thing regardless. And kind of success is like whatever I get away with. It's just fun. I have like a kind of roguish
Whatever.
mentality. And if I just
Whatever I
think
don't
that-
it's
want
hot
to do
for.
hype stuff.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
I think
just
that actually
content.
answers another question that we have in here.
Like I remember in of course you can edit this out, I'm sure, if it like were to be
We're
some
not
kind of
gonna.
spoiler, but that's session 2 where I've got my phone and thing, I'm letting Ben know what's going on as I'm moonlighting as Desmond, and he's like, of course try not to kill my character, act in line with what he would do. And Neo's character
Oh
gets
yeah.
stuck in that water, and I'm like, the content says I gotta risk it all on a reef that I'm not even that great at to pull him out of there, because that's the content. And
It
we
was
saw
awesome.
in that moment just the drum roll, everybody invested in that moment.
Oh yeah.
High
That's
energy
what drives me, that content.
Yeah.
Now, do you think Ben would have played Desmond and done the same thing, or would you think that's where you said, "Listen, I'm vibing. I'm vibing by myself now. I'm going to make this risk." Do you think he would have done it?
He when I posed the situation to him afterwards during the break, there was a long pause, as evidently he was like, I don't like that amount of risk, when you knew that if you failed it would be over. But he couldn't deny that it was within Desmond's character, and that he would have at least was compelled to do the same thing.
Yeah,
He doesn't
he
know
would
if
thought
would have,
about it.
like gone for it or not.
I will think about
but
this.
yeah.
I mean, it got my heart rate up. It was
Yeah. It was so good.
okay. It was
Yeah.
a good one.
Well, that was actually the truth is that was the first time in the game up to that point where it was self-sacrifice, right? So
Yeah.
until then, no one had done a self-sacrifice. People had
Mhm.
sacrificed other people left and right, but no one had said, I might lose on purpose, but I'm still gonna do this.
Yeah.
So that was pretty bold. We were waiting for a paladin, to stand on the edge of the ship, and be like, well,
Uh-huh.
I'm too good to get in a boat. I'll just go down, women and children and everyone else before me. But all the paladins seem to have changed last minute. And I'm big enough to get a seat, so I'm going to take a seat in one of the side
Yeah.
boats. I'll tell you about
Uh-huh.
my God as we paddle ashore.
Right.
So
I can atone for this later.
I can atone
Yeah.
later. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing what their gods
Mhm.
tell them to do in the middle of life and death stuff.
It was a fun social experiment, seeing
Yeah.
what people would do in
Oh,
a
100%.
situation like that.
I know that you do Land of Far.
Yeah.
Tell me what Land of Far is.
So Ben, another contestant on this show that, of course, you've all met, we've all talked all that stuff. We put our heads together and kind of came up with our own system that is still the spirit of Dungeon Dragons, with killing goblins with swords and magic and getting gold, all that dopamine of loot, but in a way that you can just roll up to a bar with your friends, not even knowing what dice or goblin is, and still pick it up quickly and be able to have a good time. So instead of a 400-page rule book and taking an hour to create your character, it takes all of a minute to create your character. And our rule book, that you don't even have to fully read all the way through by any means, is only like 24 pages long, but you still get a fun, immersive 3-hour role-playing experience, rolling dice, again, killing goblins or orcs or dragons or what have you. And it's a nice little way to just kind of introduce yourself to tabletop role-playing games in a big social setting, in a way that actually works for up to 20 people to play together at a bar at the same time without getting super bogged down but still keeping within the spirit of it. And so we've been going for, as of yesterday, 1 year now, which is a huge milestone for us, and it feels really good.
Yeah, I've played and Rusko's played. We've been down there. So
I was actually at the first game.
We'd love to have you. Like I said, you guys being there was some of the best role players we've had. I loved having you guys. I think it was Facme, the one-handed dwarf that was just using a shield kind of stuff. Just giving yourself that blatant handicap, but just having a great narrative storytell for it that made the character so much more memorable. It was such a fun addition to the game. And I love having players like you guys that are just understanding it's not about the number crunching. It's not about just the most clear path to victory. It's just about making those memories.
It's a story. It's
exactly.
It's
collaborative storytelling is ultimately what, tabletop role-playing games are all about.
All right. So one last thing. How do we find you? How do we find Land of Far? You got Twitter pages, you got Facebooks, you got is there any information?
What if he doesn't want to be found?
Well, then he might as well be on an island with 5 of his best friends.
Well, my personal page, social media for me is just a dumpster to find memes in for the most part. But, if you want to find me, just search on Instagram at Land of Far. We have this cool catch for yourselves in the Land of Far. Coincidentally, you're in a bar. So at Land of Far, you'll find all the detail of where you can find me at those events. I'll be there. If you want to grab some boards and cheese, grab a drink, roll up a quick character, have some fun. Maybe make a deception check to see if a little poop check gets you anywhere. I'd love to have you. I'll definitely reward that rule of cool. Any opportunity I get, guarantee it.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not even here to play Land of Far. I just need to use your bathroom. Is there a way I don't have to pay the cover?
I've already made your character, sir. Please come join us.
You can read the rules while you're.
Download this PDF and come back to me when you finish. Sure, if you have enough time to read it,
All right. Well, rock and roll. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've been hanging with Alexander, aka Alabim.